once had a client reach out a couple days before her appointment to let me know that she wasn't very comfortable wearing makeup because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship. On the day of the appointment, she texted me to let me know that she would be a few minutes late. When she arrived, she was acting very, very shy, and I could tell that she was pretty nervous about getting her makeup done today. I reassured her that there was nothing to worry about and that I would keep it as natural as possible and have her check every single step to make sure that she was still comfortable with the way the look was turning out. Because of this, it did end up taking me a little bit of extra time to get through the entire eye look. And just as I was finishing up her eyeshadow, I looked down and saw that she had been crying. I took a step back, asked her if she was okay, offered her some water, and asked if she wanted to go outside for some fresh air. I assured her I had no problem waiting because I completely understand. She stepped out into the hallway, and after about 10 minutes, I went to go check on her. When I walked out in the hallway, I couldn't find her anywhere. I texted her to see if she was okay, but I never got a text back. There are some people that you just can't be friends with, and this story is a perfect example of that. I used to have a friend who would hang out with me and my boyfriend a lot. It started off as just every once in a while, but quickly turned into every single time I would go hang out with my boyfriend, she wanted to come with. Eventually, I told her that I was uncomfortable with her hanging around me and my boyfriend all of the time and that we needed some alone time as a couple. At first, she took it pretty well and started giving us some space. Or so I thought. A couple weeks later, me and my boyfriend are going out on a date. He takes me out to eat, and then we decide that we're gonna go to a park and walk around. At this time, it was starting to get a little bit dark, but the park had plenty of streetlights lining all of the sidewalks. As we're walking around, my boyfriend stops me directly under a streetlight, gives me a kiss, and whispers, "I love you," for the very first time. A few minutes later, I get a text from my friend. She sends me a picture of me and my boyfriend kissing under a streetlight, and underneath it wrote, "I love you." She had been following us the entire time. After I realized my friend had been following me and my boyfriend around this entire time, I decided to confront her again. But this time, I told her that if she did not leave us alone, I would be contacting the police. Again, she seemed to take this news pretty well. The following week, she came to school announcing that she was throwing a party because her parents would be out of town. She invited both me and my boyfriend separately and told us a bunch of our other friends would be there too. She was super excited about throwing this party, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt because we had been friends for so long. After I talked to my boyfriend about it, he was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just her way of saying sorry." So we decided to go to this party. When the weekend came around, we decided to text some of our other friends to see if we could all carpool. But everyone we texted said they had no idea what we were talking about and they were never invited, even though the girl throwing the party specifically said that she did invite them. That's when we realized that she was faking throwing a party to get me and my boyfriend at her house alone. I have no idea what would have happened if we decided to go, but after that, I never talked to her again. I met the love of my life on a cruise ship and I've never seen him again. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it belongs to a friend of mine. When I was growing up, we moved around a lot because my dad was in the army. As a way of keeping in touch with old friends, a group of us from where I spent most of my childhood decided to go on a cruise every summer. Last summer on the cruise ship, there was a boy who seemed particularly interested in me. Since I go on these trips with my friends, I usually don't pay any attention to somebody looking to start up a new friendship. But this time, it was different. After talking to this boy at the pool one day, we realized that we actually have a lot in common. I ended up spending the entire week on the cruise getting to know this boy. He even came to my hotel room and watched movies and hung out with me. The connection between us was unlike anything I had ever felt before. On the very last day of the cruise, I went to meet with him to have breakfast. When I got there, he pulled out a ring and asked me to marry him. I said no and laughed it off, but he reassured me that the offer would always stand. We exchanged phone numbers before getting off the cruise, but after that, I never saw him again. What do I do?
Another movie recommendation. Gerald's Game is a movie about a couple who goes on a vacation getaway to spice up their relationship with some kinky sex stuff. Her husband handcuffs her to the bed just like that and tells her that if she screams that nobody can hear her because they are in the middle of nowhere. As she's still handcuffed, they end up getting into an argument and he ends up having a heart attack, falling off the bed and dying. And she cannot help him because she is handcuffed to the bed. She's all alone, nobody's coming for her, her husband is dead on the floor, has no food and no water. As she's handcuffed to the bed for days, she starts hallucinating and gets visited by a few creatures. How is she going to get out? How is she going to free herself from the handcuffs? She doesn't have a key and she is locked in very tight. Some parts of the movie are really strange and at the very end you're like, what the heck? I really like this movie and everybody who I know who has watched this movie says that it's one of their favorite movies. It's a Netflix original, so if you want to watch it, it's on Netflix and I definitely think it's worth the watch. And it's rated R, so
Story time about how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife cheating on us in a tent. So luckily this is not my real mom. This is my stepmom. Her and my dad married a few years ago. So my family and my boyfriend's family are pretty close. My boyfriend's parents and my parents, aka my stepmom and my dad, get along with his parents. A little backstory on my stepmom. After my dad and my mom got divorced, he met her and they started dating pretty quickly. And they got married after only 5 months of having dated. So she becomes my stepmom, but she never really made any effort to get to know me. And I never really liked her. Like, she gave me a weird feeling. So my boyfriend and his family asked us to go on a camping trip one time. And my dad and I didn't really want to go because we never really go out. But my stepmom was super keen on going and she finally convinced us to go, so we ended up going. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, why do you want to go to this camping trip so much? We finally get there and set up our camping tents. That's when my dear stepmom says that she doesn't want me and my boyfriend sleeping in the same tent just in case we try to do something. In other words, she didn't want him and I to do the dirty. Why? Because she was hoping that my boyfriend and her would do the dirty. Part 2 is up. 2 of how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife doing the dirty, literally right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, my stepmom said that my boyfriend and I couldn't sleep in the same tent because she didn't want us doing anything. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that during this time, my stepmom and my dad were always fighting and they were totally ignoring each other, so they couldn't sleep in the same tent. So basically, my dad and I were sleeping in the same tent. My stepmom was in another tent. We all go to bed and everyone's asleep. That's when I started hearing like the noise of plants ruffling. I ignored it and I went back to sleep. But then I heard some giggling coming from the tent. So I start walking over to my boyfriend's tent because that's where all the giggling is coming from. I was trying not to be heard, and as I started getting closer to the tent, I tripped over and fell into the tent. That's when both my stepmom and my boyfriend start screaming, and I see them sitting naked in the tent. That's when my boyfriend started lying, saying that she forgot something in his tent and that's why she was there. And it gets worse. My dad wakes up and hears all the commotion. He comes over to find his wife and my boyfriend naked. Part 3 of how my dad and I caught his wife and my boyfriend doing the dirty right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 2, I fall into the tent and catch my boyfriend naked with my stepmom in it. That's when my dad comes over and sees them both naked. And my dad just started going nuts. He started yelling at my stepmom. My dad was so hurt. I was too, but I was also in shock from seeing my stepmom naked. I couldn't believe that my boyfriend had been hooking up with my stepmom all this time. And like right under my dad's and my nose. That's when my dad and I were just yelling at them. But then my dad called an Uber and we went home. He went straight to his lawyer and filed for divorce. But of course, my stepmom didn't want to sign the divorce papers, so it took really long for my dad to finally get divorced from that witch. Oh yeah, and I haven't spoken to my ex ever since the day I caught him naked with my stepmom. I never even got an apology, not one from him. Time for shoutouts. I will be choosing one person from my live to give a shout out to in my next story time. So today's shout out is for Cindy _ the tree. Another story time is coming the day after tomorrow. Bye.